Hey there, and welcome back. I'm Alex Goad, best-selling coach, author, small business specialist, and today we're continuing with 10x Your Life, and we're going to talk about the 10 critical habit zones where if you make just slight modifications, you can get everything that you want. You ready for this? So, in the last video, I made a big promise and I gave you an exact number. I told you that if you change these 10 things, each by 26% only. 26%, that's a quarter better than you're already doing. Well, 26% improvement times 10 adds up to 1,000% improvement. It's the difference between not being able to get out of your own way and being the kind of person that sets a goal for themselves that can be a month, a year, 10 years down the line, and systematically reaches and accomplishes everything that they set their mind to do. All right, let's get started right away. So the first critical zone is truth. This is simply how you interact with all of the information that's going on in the outside world and even with the information that's going on inside of you. A habit of truth is a habit of looking at things and trying to see them as accurately as possible. Now, by our very own flawed human nature, we interpret everything. We have all of these different biases. We have cultural biases. We have societal biases. We have biases that are created by our experience. And all of those things are kind of like different colored sunglasses that we put on that are filters on reality and that make us see more of one thing and less of another thing. And eventually, if you become like the average person, well, you have trouble seeing anything for what it really is because you've already recorded in your mind what you think that is, and you've already determined a way of behavior that you think is suitable in that scenario. And if you're not willing to look at it and investigate it and see what's really going on here, if you're not willing to challenge your established thinking and try to make it more accurate all the time, that's one of the ways that people stay the same and have trouble making progress. The next critical zone is the courage zone. This is maybe the most important of all because if you want to do anything new in life, anything that's hard or uncertain, you're going to have to face fear. And fear is the number one thing that cripples all ambitions of people on earth. Because whenever you do something that causes fear, there's a reason why. It's because there's a certain element of risk involved. You might be risking money, you might be risking reputation, you might be risking your feeling of self-esteem. You might simply be risking what you think you're going to look like in front of other people. But the point is that without courage, nothing can change at all. You can't start an exercise program, you can't write a book, you can't teach something to someone, you can't ask out on a date the person that you'd really want. And so the way that you interact with those points of friction in your life, when it goes like, oh, I'm not sure about this, that's one of the most important systems that you've got. If you deal with it in a reasonable way that helps you go forward, then all the doors are open. But if you're like most people, then you probably have this reflex of shying away from anything that triggers a fear response. And that's really something to investigate. All right, sticky one. Next, energy. So energy is one of the things that is required to accomplish anything in life. If you have no energy, it's very hard to set a goal. It's hard to reach a goal. It's hard to control your mood. It's hard to even get to work. It's hard to exercise. So cultivating energy is an incredibly powerful habit. And being aware of the things that either give you tons of energy or take away your energy, and then doing more of this and less of that, all of these things are habits that allow you to have more gas in the tank and more horsepower in the engine. And that, of course, is the fuel behind life itself. The next critical habit zone is value. What do I mean by value? I mean by value your ability to transform something that has low value into something that has high value. I'll give you just a very quick example of this. So I was a chronic minimum wage earner until about 25 years old. And I never got a diploma. And the thing that made all the difference was something that I learned by myself through these PDFs and these ebooks on the internet, I learned how to do online marketing, online advertising, and copywriting. And I wasn't even very good at it. But being just a tiny little bit able to do that transformed my value from a minimum wage earner to somebody that could command 5, 10, 100 times more per hour than I used to. And no matter what your life is, there's always points of leverage where you can increase the value that you're able to deliver to the outside world, the value that you're able to bring to relationships, the financial value that you're able to contribute in your job, whatever it may be. But there are leverage points where if you seek out, so the habit is seek out and find the leverage points and increase your value. When you increase your value, your opportunities increase by 10 times the increase in your value. All right, moving on. The next critical zone is clarity. So we are so used to living with confusion. We're used to not knowing what we want. I'm not sure exactly where that comes from. And right now, this video, the scope of it is not to talk about why we're all so confused or how to get clarity. It's just to single out the fact that the more clarity you have in your life, the more you know exactly what you want and what you don't want, the easier it is to make choices. The longer you keep clear objectives in your mind, the more you're likely to reach them. And really, perhaps the number one most powerful predictor of long-term success is persistence of motive. How long do you have the same motive? How long do you keep the same idea? Well, first you got to get that idea and you got to make it clear. The next critical aspect is what I call commitment scope. Now, this is something that I see broken in 95% of people in our society. Why? Again, not my place to speculate, but maybe it's become trendy to overpromise and underdeliver. This is tremendously damaging to the self, though. So what's a commitment scope? A commitment scope is the size and the duration of the commitments that you're able to make. So, for example, if you tell yourself that you're going to start flossing because you haven't been flossing, well, if you can say, I'm going to start today and I'm going to floss for the rest of my life, and that then happens, then that means you're able to do small things and you're able to carry them through for a long time. But what I notice is that the average person makes 10, 20, 50, 100 empty promises every day. They make these promises to other people and they say it out loud and they're making that promise to themselves. Well, this is a really critical aspect. You have to look at yourself and you have to see what are the words that come out of your mouth. What are the thought impulses that come into your brain where you say, yep, I'm going to do that. And then you do no such thing. Extraordinarily damaging. So one of the most important things is if you're not cognizant of your commitment scope, if you're not aware of what you're able to commit to and uphold as a commitment, then your plans are often not worth much either, because then the two things are separated, right? So you can make this glorious plan, but you have no ability to see it through. Well, you got to work on this. And you got to start small, you build it up, and then eventually you can really pick and choose any opportunity and see it to term. All right, the next one is purpose. Critical, absolutely critical. So what's purpose? I've talked about it in previous videos, but purpose is the kind of sense that whatever you're doing has some deeper meaning to you than just the thing itself. For example, if you do work where you feel like you're doing good in the world, where you feel like you're using your skills, your intelligence, then you're going to be 100 times more motivated than if you're doing it just for the money. So this is something really important because in our society, in our world, we've learned to keep up with the Joneses and we've learned to follow mainstream and we've learned to do whatever other people do. The problem with that is that a lot of the time there's no fulfillment in it for us because that works for them, but it doesn't work for us. So it's really important that you get to know yourself and that you do things that matter to you, no matter what they may be and no matter what other people may think, because that is one of the top things that gives you energy, drive, and whatever it takes to accomplish the things that you want to get done. The next critical habit zone is output. This is how do you produce in everyday life? Well, the average person often underproduces at the last minute, meaning that if there's no deadline, they do nothing. And if there is a deadline, they wait until the deadline is looming over them and they've barely got time to do it. And then all of a sudden the stress, the adrenaline kicks in, the work gets done. That's one system of being productive or of outputting work. But the difference between that way of doing things and a true professional that can sit down and do the work every single day at exactly a predetermined time for a predetermined amount of time, well, it makes all the difference in the world. If you can invest every day reliably a part of your energy and time, just a small part, into something big that really matters, that's how you get all the big goals. The ninth critical zone is the paramosphere. Paramosphere is basically a combination of atmosphere, which stands for environment, and parameters. So it's the parameters of your environment. But it's not just the physical outside environment, it's also the internal environment. So for example, an untangible or less tangible part of the paramosphere is your level of confidence. If you feel really confident about your abilities, if you feel confident about the fact that you can set yourself a goal and reach it, it's completely different from if you feel unconfident. The same thing, for example, we just talked about it above, if you have a deadline, whereas you don't have a deadline. And another huge difference maker is, will there be a consequence if you meet the deadline or if you don't meet the deadline? So if there's consequences, you're more likely to take action. The point is that you can shift subtle things in your environment that make it 10 times easier for you to say no to one thing and yes to another thing. I'd be tempted to get into this really deeply, but I'm going to resist for today so that I can keep this video manageable for you. All right, and the last critical habit zone is habits. That's repetitive, isn't it? Yes, it is. So the more you are aware of the fact that all of these factors are actually composed largely of habits, not of conscious decisions, but of habits, either ones that you've already have or ones that you could create if you put your mind to it. If you work with that frame in mind, then that's how really you can choose great executables for each critical zone and make them automatic, make them easy, and make it seem almost unnaturally automatic and easy for you to get spectacular results in all of these different spheres. Now, when you have good habits in all of these spheres, you can really set yourself a goal, a clear goal that's meaningful to you, that you can attack with energy, and you can become successful in the accomplishment of those goals every single time, no matter what they may be. This is the ultimate power of life. That's the whole point of 10x your life. It's so that you can pick and choose what you want to be, who you want to be, and then actually do it, not compromise. Before I let you go, I'm going to talk to you now about 2 keystone habits that are not these. So this is for if you're really feeling down and out, if you feel like nothing's going right for you, if you feel semi-depressed, or if you feel like you're a klutz or you don't got it or whatever the term may be. There are 2 things that you can choose to change in your life that will cause everything else to be easier to change down the line. Here's what they are. The first thing is the exercise habit. So when you start exercising, if you don't exercise regularly, if you start exercising regularly, what you'll find is that you'll want to change your diet. Your body will change. The amount of energy that you have will go up. You'll look better. You'll feel better. People will notice. Your confidence will go up. You'll be willing to have more courage and undertake bigger things, and so on and so forth. So this is a kind of snowball habit that if you don't know where to start, if none of this means anything to you because you're kind of feeling down or low, start with an exercise habit. 3 times a week can be 15 minutes 3 times a week. Stick with it long enough, it'll change your life. The second keystone habit that has the same kind of power to really modify everything else is to become a clean and tidy person if you're not already. So there's a really great book that I tremendously enjoyed and that I love recommending to people. It's called The Kondo Method by Marie Kondo. Actually, it's called The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up. So I got that wrong. The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up. It's a really short book. I think you can listen to it on Audible. It's about 4.5 hours of listening time. And it'll show you how you can really use her system for organizing your stuff in a way that's much more efficient than you probably have it done now. And one of the biggest things that this achieves is it declutters your environment. When you declutter your environment, you start to feel relaxed. You start to feel clear. You start to feel more centered. And from that centered place, it becomes easier to really attack all of these other things and to go for bigger, more important goals. So, once again, if you don't know where to start with these, well, start with a keystone habit. And you'll see that everything else will tend to want to add itself to that success that you're already having. So I hope that you've enjoyed this short video. If you have, give me a like, give me a comment, share the video. Important, enter your name and email in the box below. And once again, I'd like to remind you before I go that today is a template for every day. The way you behave today is the way you're going to behave every day. So do something about it now. Thanks for watching. I'm Alex Goad, and I'll see you next time.